Jasmine Patel had 3 rules for running the daily grind: her cozy coffee shop in downtown Seattle, never skimp on bean quality, always remember the regular's orders, and under no circumstances allow interdimensional portals to open during the morning rush. She'd been doing great on the first 2. The portal that materialized between the espresso machine and the pastry display wasn't particularly large or threatening, it looked more like someone had forgotten to properly render a piece of reality. What made it annoying was its timing, right when she had a line of caffeine-deprived customers stretching to the door. "If you're selling enlightenment, we're full up," Jasmine called out, not looking up from the latte she was crafting. "Try the yoga studio next door." "We are representatives of the Galactic Administrative Council," announced a voice that somehow managed to sound both bureaucratic and bewildered. "We seek Earth's designated diplomatic representative." "That's nice," Jasmine replied, adding a perfect leaf pattern to the latte's foam. "But unless you're ordering something, you'll need to wait in line like everyone else." The portal flickered, and through it stepped what appeared to be a being made entirely of crystalline filing cabinets wearing what might have been a tie. It was followed by 2 floating orbs that gave off the distinct impression of junior associates on their first day. The morning crowd, being Seattle residents, barely looked up from their phones. "There seems to be some confusion," the crystalline being said, producing a holographic clipboard. "According to Protocol 7249-B, Section 12, Paragraph 3, upon first contact, the most suitable representative of a species must be selected based on their ability to interface with galactic bureaucratic standards." "That's fascinating," Jasmine said, handing the latte to a customer. "Grande oat milk mocha for Steve." "Our scans indicate that you, Jasmine Patel, are the only human who has successfully navigated your species' most complex bureaucratic system without experiencing temporal collapse." "I filed my taxes while running a small business during a pandemic," Jasmine shrugged. "It wasn't that bad. You completed the forms in record time. I had good coffee. You found 17 legitimate loopholes. I have a good accountant. You made the IRS auditor cry. He needed the caffeine boost anyway." Jasmine finally looked up. "Look, I'm kind of in the middle of something here. Can we do this later?" The crystalline being's drawers rustled in what might have been agitation. "This is a matter of galactic importance. Earth has been selected for potential membership in the Grand Galactic Coalition." "Sounds great. Coffee?" What? Would you like some coffee? Tea? Hot chocolate?" "You're holding up the line, and I have a policy about that." The being's crystalline structure shifted in what might have been confusion. "The proper protocol for first contact negotiations involves caffeine," Jasmine interrupted firmly. "At least in this establishment. So either order something or come back after the morning rush." The floating orbs exchanged what might have been glances. The crystalline being's drawers shuffled through several configurations before it finally asked, What would you recommend?" 20 minutes later, the being, who had introduced itself as Administrative Coordinator X-227, or Admin for short, was sitting at the counter, its crystalline structure vibrating slightly as it experienced its first pumpkin spice latte. "This is unprecedented," Admin declared, a slight buzz in its bureaucratic tone. "The combination of flavors, the efficient delivery system, the perfect temperature gradient." "Just wait until you try the muffins," Jasmine said, sliding a plate across the counter. "So, about this Galactic Coalition thing." "Yes." Admin's filing cabinets perked up. "Earth has been selected for consideration, but we must warn you, the process is extremely complex. There are forms to be filed in quintuplicate, regulations to be followed, committees to be formed." "Sounds like opening a restaurant in Seattle," Jasmine mused, automatically starting another customer's usual order. "Health department, business licenses, insurance. This is far more complex. The standard application process takes approximately 57 Earth years." "Aha. And is there an expedited process?" Admin structure froze. Well, yes, but it's highly irregular. But it exists. Technically, under subsection 47Q. Perfect. Jasmine grinned. You know what they say about technicalities, they're the best kind of correct. Now, tell me more about these regulations while I get you another latte. The floating orbs, who had been contentedly sharing a chocolate croissant, began taking furious notes. Somehow, they sensed, this was not going to be a standard first contact scenario. In the following hours, as Jasmine simultaneously ran her coffee shop and negotiated Earth's entrance into galactic society, she discovered several things. First, that the galaxy was run essentially like a massive homeowners association with nuclear weapons. Second, that most alien species took between 50 and 100 years to complete the application process. And third, that no one had ever thought to bribe the application committee with perfectly crafted espresso drinks. So let me get this straight, Jasmine said, wiping down the counter during the afternoon lull. The entire galaxy runs on paperwork. Digital forms, quantum documentation, psychic bureaucracy. Admin corrected, now on its fifth latte. But essentially, yes. And you chose me because I'm good at paperwork. You are the only being we've encountered who seems to genuinely enjoy it. Jasmine considered this while restocking the napkin dispensers. You know, most people would be intimidated by the responsibility of representing humanity to an advanced galactic civilization. And you're not. Please. I deal with pre-coffee humans every morning. Galactic bureaucracy sounds refreshingly straightforward in comparison. As the sun set over Seattle, casting long shadows through the daily grind's windows, admin and its assistants prepared to return through their portal with an unprecedented achievement, Earth's preliminary application for galactic membership, completed in under 12 hours, accompanied by a large box of coffee beans and detailed brewing instructions. This has been most irregular, admin noted, its crystalline structure now slightly caffeine-stained. Welcome to Earth, Jasmine replied cheerfully. We specialize in irregular. As the portal closed behind their first alien visitors, Jasmine started closing up shop, humming to herself. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, introducing humanity to galactic society, navigating interstellar bureaucracy, possibly preventing diplomatic incidents, but first, she'd need to order more coffee beans. After all, rule number 1 was never skimp on bean quality, even when your customers included beings made of living paperwork. Rules were made to be creatively interpreted. The Galactic Administrative Council had rules about everything. Literally everything. There were regulations about the proper curvature of spacecraft hulls, Section 459b, Guidelines for the Acceptable Color Spectrum of Artificial Gravity Fields, Appendix 7249-X, and a 17-volume treatise on the correct method of filing paperwork about filing paperwork. Jasmine discovered all of this 1 month after becoming Earth's representative, when a holographic notice materialized in her coffee shop, citing Earth 4 irregular orbital aesthetic violations. I'm sorry, Jasmine said to the shimmering document floating above her espresso machine, we're being cited for ugly satellites. Not ugly, corrected Administrative Coordinator X-227, admin, who had become a regular customer and Earth's primary liaison. Aesthetically non-compliant. According to Galactic Orbital Decoration Code 73F, all artificial satellites must conform to the approved list of geometric shapes and reflect exactly 27.3% of incoming solar radiation. Our satellites reflect the wrong amount of sunlight. And some of them are distinctly non-geometric. Admin's filing cabinet structure shuddered. The International Space Station is particularly problematic. It looks like someone played pickup sticks in zero gravity. Jasmine took a long sip of her own coffee, something she usually reserved for tax season. How long do we have to fix this? Standard compliance period is 50 years. And the expedited timeline? 3 days. Jasmine smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who had once convinced the health department that a coffee cup pyramid was a load-bearing structure. Admin, I'm going to need you to show me every single regulation about satellite compliance. And I mean every single one. 48 hours later, the Galactic Administrative Council's Orbital Compliance Committee received Earth's response. It came in the form of a quantum-encrypted document that, when opened, released a burst of perfectly legal but extremely annoying glitter into their dimension. "What?" asked Chief Administrator Y-891, brushing sparkles from their crystalline surfaces, "is this?" "Earth's satellite compliance proposal," Admin explained, trying not to sound proud. "They've found a way to make all their satellites compliant within the 3-day window." "How?" "Well, according to Section 459b, Paragraph 73, Subparagraph Q, any orbital structure can be considered compliant if it serves a recognized artistic purpose." Yes. Earth has declared their entire orbital space an interactive art installation titled Humanity's First Steps, a commentary on geometric conformity in the digital age. The committee stared at the proposal, which included a 300-page artistic statement written entirely in haiku, a series of interpretive dance videos explaining the cultural significance of each satellite's position, and a certificate from a newly formed, but technically legitimate, Earth Art Council declaring the entire mess a protected cultural landmark. "They can't do this," Y-891 protested. Actually, Admin pulled out a copy of the regulations, now annotated with sticky notes and coffee stains. "They can." The artistic exemption clause was added after the Great Sculptural Rebellion of Betelgeuse v. And Earth's submission includes all required documentation, filed in quintuplicate, with the proper quantum signatures. But, Y-891's drawers began opening and closing rapidly in distress. "The forms are scented. Pumpkin spice," Admin confirmed. "Perfectly compliant with Section 892C regarding official document olfactory parameters." Meanwhile, back on Earth, Jasmine was hosting an unusual meeting in her coffee shop after hours. Around the table sat a collection of Earth's finest bureaucratic minds, 3 patent lawyers, 2 DMV supervisors, and a library scientist who had once cataloged an entire collection of books about cataloging books. "Ladies, gentlemen, and others," Jasmine addressed the group, standing before a holographic display of the complete Galactic Administrative Code. "We've won round 1, but this is just the beginning. The galaxy runs on rules, and they expect us to either take 50 years learning them all or give up. Instead, we're going to do what humanity does best. Find loopholes," suggested one of the lawyers, grinning. "Malicious compliance," offered a DMV supervisor hopefully. "Create chaos within strictly defined parameters," the library scientist asked, already taking notes. "All of the above," Jasmine confirmed. "They've given us access to their complete regulatory database. Every rule, every regulation, every single bureaucratic procedure they've developed over millions of years. They expect us to be overwhelmed. Instead, we're going to read the fine print." The group leaned forward, eyes gleaming with the special enthusiasm of people who had spent their lives navigating complex systems and finally had a chance to use their powers for something bigger than parking disputes. "Did you know," Jasmine continued, pulling up a specific section of the regulations, "that there's no rule against submitting forms in the form of interpretive dance? Or that the definition of standard communication methods was never actually standardized? Or that the official language requirements include 3 extinct languages and one that's technically just a series of meaningful silences?" The meeting went on late into the night, fueled by coffee and the peculiarly human joy of finding precisely the right way to do exactly the wrong thing. By morning, they had drafted Operation Guidelines Optional, a comprehensive plan to drive the galactic bureaucracy to distraction while remaining technically, perfectly, absolutely compliant with every single rule. As her unexpected team of bureaucratic rebels filed out, already beginning to implement their various parts of the plan, Jasmine began preparing for another day at the coffee shop. She had a feeling she'd need to stock up on extra beans. Causing administrative chaos was thirsty work. Admin materialized just as she was opening, looking somewhat frazzled. "The Orbital Compliance Committee has approved your artistic exemption," they announced, but they've requested a formal presentation on Earth's artistic principles. Perfect, Jasmine replied, already starting admin's usual order. I've arranged for a mime troupe to deliver our response. In interpretive dance. At sunset. In zero gravity. Admin's filing cabinets clicked in what might have been approval. You know, they said humans would either take centuries to adapt to galactic bureaucracy or fail entirely. They obviously never tried to get a business permit in San Francisco, Jasmine replied, adding an extra shot of espresso to admin's drink. Now, let me tell you about our plans for standardizing communication protocols through a combination of synchronized swimming and Baroque opera. 3 months after Earth's artistic satellite declaration, the Galactic Administrative Council faced an unprecedented crisis. It started when the Zeta Reticuli submitted their annual energy consumption report as an interpretive ice sculpture that had to be kept at exactly absolute zero. The Andromedans followed with their tax forms encoded in the migration patterns of artificial quantum butterflies. But the final straw came when the Sirius Cybernetic Collective filed their parking permit renewals as a series of carefully choreographed solar flares. This is all Earth's fault, grumbled Supreme Administrator Z-1001, watching through their office window as a troupe of methane-based performance artists from Neptune 7 demonstrated the proper filing procedure for waste management applications through interpersonal gas diffusion. In her coffee shop, which had somehow become the unofficial embassy of Earth, primarily because no other diplomatic venue had decent espresso, Jasmine was hosting another unusual gathering. Representatives from 17 different species crowded the space, each learning the fine art of what humans called working the system. The key, Jasmine explained to a crystalline being from Rigel who resembled an origami swan made of diamonds, is to follow every rule exactly while completely missing the point. Like your orbital art installation, asked a cloud of sentient plasma contained in what appeared to be a floating teacup. Exactly. Did you know there's no specific regulation about the required state of matter for filing forms? That's why the Andromedans got away with those quantum butterflies. The gathered aliens took furious notes, though some used methods that seemed to involve manipulating the fundamental forces of the universe rather than actual writing. Admin, who had long since given up trying to maintain proper bureaucratic distance, was helping demonstrate the concept of malicious compliance by teaching a group of silicon-based life forms how to file their mining permits through interpersonal resonance frequencies. The council is in chaos, admin reported, their filing cabinet structure now permanently coffee-stained. 17 different committees have been formed just to define what constitutes a proper form submission. 3 of them have accidentally declared themselves performance art installations. Jasmine nodded approvingly. How's the emergency regulation revision coming along? They've tried to ban interpretive dance as an official submission method 6 times. Unfortunately, according to Section 47B, any new regulation must be announced through all currently approved communication channels. Including interpretive dance, Jasmine finished with a grin. The dance troupe unionized last week. They're demanding better lighting and gravity-optional performance spaces. The revolution spread across the galaxy like a perfectly documented wave of chaos. The Pleiades Consortium submitted their entire planetary defense budget as a series of carefully timed neutrino emissions. The Vega system filed their application for a temporal manipulation permit using actual manipulated time. The forms both had and hadn't been submitted, and wouldn't be filed until last Tuesday. But perhaps the most impressive display came from the Arcturus Collective, who submitted their annual species census as a living mathematical proof that simultaneously proved its own accuracy and demonstrated why the requirement for physical paper copies was logically impossible in a universe with more than 4 dimensions. Back in the daily grind, Jasmine had expanded her menu to include drinks suitable for various alien physiologies. The methane breathers from Neptune 7 were particularly fond of her liquid nitrogen lattes, while the plasma beings appreciated the theoretical concept of coffee quantum entangled with its own caffeine molecules. The council has called an emergency session, admin announced one morning, their drawers rattling with barely contained amusement. Apparently, the hive mind of Betelgeuse submitted their parking ticket appeal as a recursive bureaucratic fractal. The processing clerks have been staring at it for 3 days straight. They claim it's either the most perfectly compliant document ever created or a tear in the administrative fabric of spacetime. Did they use the proper cover sheet? Jasmine asked innocently. 17 of them, each existing in a different probability state. The chaos reached its peak when a group of quantum philosophers from Sirius B submitted their business license renewal as a thought experiment that caused every form in a 12-parsec radius to simultaneously exist in all possible states of completion. 300 filing clerks had to take emergency metaphysical leave. You know, admin mused, watching a group of telepathic octopoids from Proxima Centauri practice filing their construction permits through synchronized swimming. Before Earth joined, the galaxy was run entirely on predictable, logical bureaucratic principles. Boring, wasn't it? Jasmine replied, crafting a drink that existed primarily as a mathematical probability. Incredibly. Though I suspect that wasn't the intended outcome of giving humanity access to our regulatory systems. They gave us rules, Jasmine shrugged. We just got creative with them. It's what we do best, that and making really good coffee. Admin structure shifted in what had become recognizable as their version of a laugh. The Council is convinced Earth is deliberately spreading administrative chaos throughout the galaxy. That's ridiculous, Jasmine protested. We're simply helping other species express their own unique interpretations of regulatory compliance. Through interpersonal gas diffusion, quantum probability matrices, and synchronized swimming. Just then, a notification materialized in the center of the coffee shop. The Galactic Administrative Council had called an emergency session to address what they were calling the creative compliance crisis. All species representatives were required to attend. They're asking for the meeting to be conducted according to standard protocols, admin noted. Jasmine's smile would have made a bureaucrat cry. Perfect. I've been teaching the Andromedans about flash mobs. The emergency session of the Galactic Administrative Council was unlike any meeting in the history of organized space governance. For one thing, it was taking place simultaneously in 17 different dimensions due to what the Sirius Cybernetic Collective called innovative attendance logging procedures. For another, half the representatives had submitted their presence in the form of interpretive quantum fluctuations. Supreme Administrator Z-1001's crystalline structure was vibrating with barely contained frustration as they called the session to order. We are here to address the growing crisis of creative regulatory compliance that has infected the galaxy. Point of order, called out the representative from Betelgeuse, who was attending as a probabilistic wave function. According to Section 892D, all emergency sessions must begin with a proper ceremonial opening. Fine, Z-1001 sighed. Let's do the traditional. Actually, interrupted Jasmine, who was serving coffee from a quantum-entangled drinks cart that existed at every seat simultaneously. Earth has prepared a special ceremonial opening in accordance with Section 892D, subsection 7, which allows for culturally appropriate interpretations of traditional procedures. Before Z-1001 could protest, the chamber was filled with the sound of thousands of squeaky toys performing a synchronized rendition of Never Gonna Give You Up in perfect bureaucratic harmony. The Arcturus Collective immediately filed a motion to classify it as a form of performance art. This is exactly what we're here to discuss, Z-1001 managed, once the last squeaky note had faded. The complete breakdown of proper administrative order. I object, came a voice that was actually a series of meaningful silences from the vegan delegation. All procedures have been followed in strict accordance with regulations. Too strictly. Z-1001's filing cabinets were practically rattling. Yesterday, the Proxima Centauri Consortium submitted their annual budget as a self-aware mathematical equation that keeps requesting personal time off. It's a very hard-working equation, Jasmine noted, serving a cup of coffee that existed primarily as a theoretical construct. And it followed all proper procedures for vacation requests. The meeting descended into chaos, perfectly documented, regulation-compliant chaos. The Andromedans presented their argument through a ballet of quantum-entangled particles. The hive mind of Betelgeuse submitted their opinion as a recursive loop of properly filed feedback forms. 3 different species simultaneously filed motions to classify the entire proceedings as performance art. In the midst of it all, admin sidled up to Jasmine. "You know," they said, accepting a cup of coffee that might or might not have existed until it was observed, "I don't think this is quite what the Council expected when they decided to fast-track Earth's membership. They wanted us to either fail spectacularly or take 50 years learning their system," Jasmine replied. "Instead, we learned it in 3 months and then taught everyone else how to turn it into interpretive dance. The Council's primary complaint seems to be that while everything everyone is doing is technically within regulations, it's making their jobs impossible," Jasmine suggested. "More like, interesting." Admin structure shifted thoughtfully. "Did you know that before Earth joined, I had never actually enjoyed filing forms? And now I'm questioning why we never considered submitting hyperspace lane applications as synchronized swimming routines. It's much more efficient than the traditional method of quantum paperwork." The chaos reached new heights when the Sirius Cybernetic Collective demonstrated their new method of processing permit applications through what they called bureaucratic jazz, an improvised performance involving quantum computing, temporal loops, and what appeared to be a small chorus of self-aware black holes humming in perfect harmony. Z-1001 watched in horror as their perfectly ordered galaxy descended further into administrative anarchy. "This must stop. We demand a return to traditional bureaucratic procedures." "Point of order," called out the Rigel representative, their crystalline form sparkling with barely contained amusement. "According to Section 1047X, any demand for procedural changes must be submitted through all currently approved channels, including interpretive dance," added the Andromedan delegate. "And quantum jazz," chimed in the Sirius collective. "Don't forget the synchronized swimming," added a telepathic octopoid from Proxima Centauri. Z-1001 structure seemed to slump. "This is impossible." "Actually," Jasmine said, materializing beside them with a perfectly crafted consolation latte, "it's just different. Look around, everyone's following every single rule. They're just having fun doing it." "Bureaucracy isn't supposed to be fun." "Says who?" Jasmine gestured at the chamber, where representatives from across the galaxy were finding new and increasingly creative ways to handle administrative procedures. "Your rules say forms have to be filed. They don't say we can't turn it into art." Admin, who had been quietly observing, suddenly straightened their filing cabinets. "She's right, you know. Efficiency is up 47% since Earth introduced creative compliance. Even accounting for the time spent teaching black holes to sing in harmony." Z-1001 stared at their latte, which had somehow been crafted into a perfect representation of the galaxy's regulatory structure in foam art. But, the rules are being followed," Jasmine finished. "We're just following them with style." As if to prove her point, the Arcturus collective chose that moment to submit their proposal for regulatory reform as an interpretive quantum opera, performed by a choir of probability waves in perfect bureaucratic harmony. 3 different species immediately filed to have it classified as a new art form. Z-1001 took a long sip of their latte. "Perhaps," they said slowly, "it's time for the Council to consider some adjustments to our traditional procedures." The gathered representatives cheered, in strictly regulation-compliant ways, of course. Some through quantum fluctuations, others through synchronized swimming, and at least one through what appeared to be a small but perfectly legal violation of the laws of physics. Jasmine smiled, already planning the galaxy's first official bureaucratic dance party. After all, there was nothing in the regulations against filing forms through the medium of disco. 1 year after Earth's admission to the Galactic Administrative Council, the galaxy had become a very different place. The Council headquarters, once a monument to rigid bureaucratic order, now featured a zero-gravity interpretive dance studio, 17 quantum art galleries, and a coffee shop on every dimensional plane. Jasmine stood behind the counter of the original Daily Grind, which had somehow become the most important diplomatic venue in known space. She was crafting a specially modified dark roast for a group of plasma beings who had discovered that properly caffeinated energy states made their paperwork practically file itself. "Have you seen the latest regulatory update?" Admin asked, their filing cabinet structure now permanently decorated with artistic coffee stains in fractal patterns. They had recently been promoted to head of creative compliance, a position that hadn't existed before Earth joined the galaxy. "The one submitted as an interactive quantum sculpture garden?" Jasmine replied, expertly crafting a latte that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously. "That's the one. The Council has officially recognized bureaucratic performance art as a valid method of administrative procedure. They're calling it the Human Influence Initiative." The changes that had swept through galactic bureaucracy were profound, if somewhat bizarre. The Andromedans had established the first school of administrative interpretive dance. The hive mind of Betelgeuse was offering master classes in recursive form filing through quantum choreography. Even the traditionally conservative Rigel system had embraced the new era by developing a form of administrative meditation that allowed them to file permits through collective consciousness. "You know," Jasmine mused, watching a group of silicon-based beings practice their regulatory ballet, "when we started this, I just wanted to avoid having our satellites repossessed. And instead, you revolutionized a system that had remained unchanged for millions of years." Admin's drawers rustled with amusement. "The old guard is still adapting." "Speaking of which," Jasmine grinned, "how's Z-1001 doing with their new position?" The former Supreme Administrator had undergone a remarkable transformation after that fateful emergency session. Now they headed the Department of Bureaucratic Innovation, though they still occasionally muttered about the good old days when forms only existed in boring, single-dimensional space. "They've actually become quite enthusiastic about it," Admin replied. "Yesterday they approved a proposal to allow time travel paradox forms to be filed retroactively through interpretive quantum jazz." The coffee shop had become a hub of galactic innovation. At one table, a group of telepathic octopoids from Proxima Centauri was collaborating with energy beings from Vega to develop a new form of administrative protocol involving synchronized swimming in liquid light. In the corner, representatives from the Sirius Cybernetic Collective were teaching a black hole how to process parking permits through gravitational wave harmonics. "The latest efficiency reports are in," Admin noted, producing a holographic document that danced through the air in a complex pattern of regulatory ballet. "Administrative processing times are down 73% across all sectors. Though we did have to account for the time dilation effects from all the quantum choreography." "And complaints?" "Down 92%, though that might be because everyone's having too much fun filing them as performance art installations." The galaxy had found a strange new equilibrium. The rules still existed, thousands upon thousands of them, but they had become more like guidelines for creative expression than rigid constraints. Every species had brought its own unique interpretation to the art of bureaucracy, creating a tapestry of administrative styles that somehow worked better than the old system ever had. "There's just one small problem," Admin said, their structure shifting in what had become recognizable as their version of a suppressed laugh. "Oh. Other galaxies have noticed. The Andromeda Administrative Association has submitted a request for consultation. They want to know how to implement human-style creative compliance protocols." Jasmine's smile would have made a traditional bureaucrat faint. "Well, we did just perfect the art of filing forms through interpretive disco. The request from Andromeda was just the beginning. Soon, delegations from across the local group were arriving at the Daily Grind, eager to learn the art of creative compliance. Jasmine found herself teaching beings from other galaxies how to turn mundane paperwork into performance art, while Admin conducted seminars on the proper use of quantum jazz in regulatory filings. One morning, as Jasmine prepared for another day of serving coffee to beings from across multiple dimensions, she found a special notification floating above her espresso machine. It was printed on paper that seemed to exist in all possible states simultaneously, decorated with officially approved artistic coffee stains. "What's this?" she asked admin, who had materialized with their usual impeccable timing. "The council's highest honor," admin replied proudly. "They're officially recognizing the daily grind as the birthplace of modern creative bureaucracy. They're calling it a triumph of administrative innovation through caffeinated inspiration." Jasmine looked around her coffee shop, now a nexus of intergalactic diplomacy and artistic administrative expression. At one table, a group of quantum philosophers was debating the aesthetic principles of form filing through synchronized temporal loops. At another, representatives from 3 different galaxies were learning Earth's latest innovation, filing budget reports through Baroque opera. "You know what this means?" she asked, already reaching for her special reserve of interdimensional coffee beans. "What?" "We're going to need a bigger dance floor." As the morning rush began, now including beings from multiple galaxies and several theoretical dimensions, Jasmine smiled. She had 3 new rules for running the daily grind: never skimp on bean quality, always remember the regular's orders, even if they existed primarily as quantum probability waves, and always keep the interpretive dance floor properly calibrated for multidimensional bureaucratic expression. After all, someone had to keep the galaxy running smoothly, even if that now involved more coffee, creativity, and choreographed chaos than anyone had ever expected. And somewhere, in a quantum-shifted dimension that existed primarily as a regulatory probability, Z-1001 was practicing their synchronized swimming routine for next week's budget submission, and actually enjoying it. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly how it should be.